Hi everybody, this is Chris with Laurel City Historical Fencing. It's been a while since we've done a product review, so I thought I'd do a new one. Now, we've done them before on some training equipment, but I thought for this would be a little different. We're going to look at Medieval Wrestling by Jess Finley. This is produced by Freelance Academy Press. You can get it at their website. I'll make sure to link it below in the comments section or in the description. And I thought, let me just start off. I'll read the copy that she has on the back. In the Middle Ages, wrestling was practiced as both pastime and self-defense by every level of society, nobles, townsmen, and peasants alike, and was regarded as the foundation of all other martial arts. And no medieval wrestler's name looms as large as that of the Jewish master Ott, quote, wrestler to the noble prince of Austria, whose treatise is included in over a dozen fencing manuscripts. In the first of its kind, Jess Finley of the renowned Medieval Martial Arts Association, the Stila Harfecula, guides the reader on a journey that begins with the historical background of Ott's wrestling and culminates in step-by-step instruction for practicing the techniques of the ancient fighting art. Both the lover of history and the wrestler on the mat will find this work an invaluable resource. So, little, I guess, disclosure. This is by Jessica Finley. She's the provost of the Stila Harfecula and a friend of mine. I've known her for years, and we've, talked about different stuff. She's been involved in some of the projects I've worked on, like the Sword Buckler Messer DVD that I have for sale, also through Freelance Academy Press, which, again, disclaimer, I know the people that pretty much run Freelance Academy Press. So there may be a little bit of personal bias. I'm putting that disclaimer up for you. All that, I also tend to be a hard judge of things, just so you know I'm not just glossing this over. Now, Jess starts off with a little introduction talking about Ott and what he's known for, where the sources come from, as much of the biography as we can, which is always interesting, and a little bit of history of the time period, as well as concepts for wrestling rules, what context wrestling would have in the medieval time period, in the period we're looking at. So, it's a nice little introduction to the art, because it explains some of the stuff of, well, why doesn't he just punch him in the face or something? So it's, okay, well, here's the, the rules of wrestling of the given time period. And one thing that she does talk about in here is the different editions of Ott. Basically, it seems like his text on wrestling was copied from one source to another, and not all of them match up perfectly. Some of the earlier sources have a certain, what is it here? 17 techniques of the arms and 6 techniques of the body. So it's a smaller context, and then there's a series of more techniques that at the arms, at the body, in different scenarios, and these are seen in some of the later texts. She speculates here that some of these may be due to one of the later masters, copying Ott's original text and adding his own material to it. So that could explain why some of the stuff gets a little, let's say, strange in the order. Now, I had looked at Ott with Christian Tobler many years ago. It had been a long time before I had picked up this book and started looking at it for our regular class. I had looked at Ott many years ago, and one of the things that I thought was very strange with it, in terms of Ott's writings, I believe we were working from one of the Ringek editions. I'm not positive on this. This was many years ago. But the beginning of the text seemed very organized and just kind of step by step. And then after that, it got a little wonky. It seemed like it was written by someone that was just kind of saying, oh yeah, and I remember this technique, and oh yeah, there's another technique, and oh, what was that? Oh yeah, there was a counter to that one that we did like 4 pages ago, but let's throw that in here, and it seems a little disorganized, as compared to, say, the Liechtenauer Zettel, the original text that we have from Master Liechtenauer, where everything is a very clear, concise curriculum, working your way through techniques and applying what you know, and very organized, which I love teaching for that reason. I love using Leichenauer's text as essentially my structure for a 6-month or 8-month curriculum of longsword training, where we start off towards the beginning and work our way right through. The Ringek copy of Ott's Wrestling, not so organized. It gets a little crazy. So one of the great things that Jess did with this was she took all those techniques and actually reshuffled them a little bit. She put them in an order that actually makes sense, which is very important when you're a student learning this stuff. So, for example, while he may have a few techniques about the elbow to the balance, basically, one of the basic wrestling techniques, and then there might be a little reference to that early on in the text, and then a counter to it a few pages later, and then another counter to it later on. It's a little strange to look at all that. So what Jess Finley did was she actually went through and organized all these things and made it a little clearer. So in one section, you see the elbow to the balance, and then you see a variant on the elbow to the balance, and then you see one of the counters, and then another counter, and they're all in a logical order. And in fact, so much of a logical order that we noticed, I don't think it was called out, I didn't see it called out explicitly in the book, but I did notice that when we were doing the counters to the elbow to the balance, I'm using this one a lot because we have just done this in the last few weeks in class, but the counters as presented are based on how soon you recognize the technique being done to you. So if someone goes to take your arm over, the first technique that she shows as a counter is one that is the earliest that you can get away with. The second one is when you're a little further committed, maybe you didn't realize what the person was doing until you started to really get the arm. And then the last counter she shows is the last minute response. He's already started to really compromise your balance and has a solid grip on you. Now here's what to do if you've let it get this far. So Jess Finley put a lot of work into this to put these into a logical teaching order. Similar to what we see in a lot of the standard material like Ringek von Danzig, where we have the original master writing something and then a master later on giving commentary about it, where someone, he will, Leichenauer tells us, squint to the point and take the throat without fear. And then Ringek writes a paragraph about what that means, or von Danzig writes a paragraph about what that means and gives some clarity to this. Jess uses the same kind of thing here. Actually, I have just randomly opened to the elbow to the balance page after I'm just talking about that technique. So what she gives a little introduction about what the technique is. She has the actual in bold quote from Ott about what this is, and then has the actual step-by-step 1, 2, 3, 4 points of how to actually do the technique. This makes it very clear because sometimes the language of the 15th century translated, you kind of get an idea on it, but sometimes the timing in the sentence, and there's some structural stuff in there that sometimes gets confusing. So Jess goes and gives us a step-by-step breakdown here, which really makes it clear. In fact, if you read both back to back, it makes it very clear to understand what's going on. Now, another nice thing that she adds here is what she calls key points, which are just little notes. They're not things that are called out explicitly, but based on her own experience as a teacher and a wrestler, just little ideas that you can add to it, little side notes that she's found through her own practice that maybe make something a little better, or there's little notes sometimes about your exact footwork or how to, make sure you don't bend at the waist, bend at your knees, things like that. And she also has, just as a more of a historical note, things like this for the elbow to the balance variations. This is shown in many manuscripts, including Paul's cowl, who illustrates that you can step in front of him with your right leg, creating a barrier for his left leg. Just a little. She just puts in little notes every once in a while where, say, Master Paul's cowl or Hans Talhofer or another master shows the same technique, not in the context of Ott, but in the context of just their own wrestling stuff. So it's a neat way to cross-reference not only what Ott says, but then what Paul's cowl or Talhofer shows. So it's a nice way. She usually notes even what page it's on to make it a little easier to find, so you're not flipping through tons of stuff. And then on top of that, she has some pictures, as any good modern martial arts book has. There's a whole series of pictures that goes through the technique step by step, starting off with the setup, and then, at some point during the middle, maybe there's two during the middle, and then usually one that shows what the finish of the play will look like. Many of them also include, as the one here does, several close-up images as well to really let you see what is going on. So at the end of the book, she has a section that is just Ott's teachings, not any commentary, just in the original order, like I talked about earlier in this, in the original order that it's shown. And then she has some good notes about these techniques showing up in other manuscripts. And the last appendix here has a series on drills and class notes. So this is just very interesting to work on if you're an instructor and this is what you're using as a curriculum for your students, or if you're just even a small group and you're working through this with a training partner or a friend in school or something, and you don't want to hurt anybody. So make sure to read through this section at the end and get some ideas of how to practice not just flow drills, but also some notes on sparring and sparring responsibly with a partner, because we want to be able to come back and do this again and not break each other. The only issues I've had with this book is just some of the photography, which with the text isn't as big a deal. But there are a few of these where Jess and Aaron are wearing very similar colored outfits, and based on the grain pattern in some of the printing, I'm guessing they didn't have fantastic lighting when they took this, so the images have been processed probably in Photoshop or Designer or something, and so they end up getting kind of distorted, and you can still see everything, but being a video person and having done photography at different levels in the past, I tend to be a kind of a perfectionist with this, so when I look at some of this and I see the grain, it kind of just kind of bothers me a little. None of the students in my class have ever said anything about it. It's just very I do professional video work, so I'm a stickler for these things. The only other one, which I can't remember which technique it was, but I think it happened once or twice, where some of the photos were actually a little confusing. Not that they didn't show what was going on, but the first picture for the setup, you would see Jess on the right and Aaron on the left. The middle play, you would see Jess on the left and Aaron on the right because they flipped around. And then the end play showing them on, one of them on the ground and one of them in a controlled position above. When I would read the text and I'd look at the pictures, I sometimes would get a little confused switching from where one person is to where another. Now I understand that sometimes you're taking these photos for something like this and you say, you shoot the video, you shoot the stills, and you say, ooh, no, that's the wrong side. I don't want to show it on this side. We need to see this from over here because that's where the action's happening. So there was just a few, one or two techniques that I've encountered in this where it feels like maybe they should have used they should have used a starting position from the other side and realized it in the middle, and then did the photos and didn't go back and retake the original pictures or anything. So it's not a problem. It's just a little annoyance sometimes when you're looking at it and you're wait, no, he's on this side now. Oh, wait, no, it's not his left foot, it's his right foot because they switched. And so this is something you want to be, it's something you want to pay attention to make sure it doesn't run into a problem. All in all, Medieval Wrestling by Jessica Finley is an excellent source. I recommend it to anyone doing any sort of medieval combat. Whether or not you even focus on wrestling, if you do just primarily sword arts, still pick this up, read through it, learn these techniques, because you never know if someone's going to decide to close in and try out one of the moves on here on you, and learning this without a sword in your hand will help you when you do have a sword in your hand. So please check out Medieval Wrestling by Jess Finley. It's an excellent source book for any sort of medieval wrestling art, as well as any other self-defense system. If you have friends or family members that are interested in other systems of martial arts, pick up a copy of this for them. If they do Taekwondo, maybe they do this and then they say, oh wow, this historical fighting stuff is pretty cool, and now we get more people in our community. So definitely go pick this up. It's available at freelanceacademypress.com. I am definitely a fan of this one. If you have any other product reviews or book reviews or anything you're interested in, if you want to hear me talk about other people's stuff, I am more than willing to keep talking, as most of my students can confirm. So thanks for watching. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget rule number 1, don't get stabbed.